Hello, nerds, and welcome. We are Crossing the Nerdverse, bringing you yet another episode. My name is Travis. I am joined, as always, by my fantastic co-hosts, Ryan, Eric, and the comic book connoisseur himself, James. This week, we're going to be talking comics, specifically with the upcoming movie. We're going to be talking about the state of things with Superman.
Excited
But
about this one. I'm not gonna
But
lie.
first, we're going to do our little round of news. The big one for me, I'll get it out of the way, is going to be pro wrestling, obviously. We had Elimination Chamber over the weekend, which saw Bianca Belair win her chamber, which, I'm over Bianca Belair. But she's definitely earned her spot for a title match. She does fantastic work for the company. Kevin Owens defeated Sami Zayn in an unsanctioned match, which led to the return of Randy Orton, which is going to be exciting. And then we had... I'm trying to think of the other match. Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus, so Trishy and Tiffy time, defeated Nia Jax, the lumbering behemoth, and whoever she was tag team partnering with, which we knew obviously was going to happen because they were in Canada, and it's Trish Stratus. Trish does not lose in Canada. Men's Elimination Chamber had the biggest news. The winner, which no surprise, was John Cena. I think everyone saw that coming. What a lot of people did not see coming was John Cena's heel turn at the end, where he sided with The Rock. And that was by far one of the most shocking heel turns, I think. A lot of people online are saying, oh, we saw it coming. No, you didn't.
Nobody did.
That man's been face for over 20 years.
I was shocked, and I don't even watch the wrestling that hard. I was shocked.
Yeah, honestly, and there's only one person really that's taking it the hardest, so we all need to have a moment and send positive thoughts towards R-Truth. He is not handling it well. He's 52 years old. John Cena was his childhood hero, even though he's about 7 or 8 years older than John Cena. That's not the point. R-Truth not handling it well. So big thoughts out there to Ron Killings, poor man.
I think it is the biggest heel turn in wrestling though ever.
It's a pretty good one. It definitely took people by surprise. I think the one after that, if I was going to rank best heel turns, I'm going to have to go Roman Reigns going heel to start the bloodline and calling himself the head of the table and stuff. That was a fantastic heel turn. I got to give mad props to that one, especially with how babyface he had been forced down our throats. John Cena turning heel at the end of his career, which I think is amazing. And then after that is Hollywood Hulk Hogan going NWO. Those are the three
bring up Hulk Hogan.
biggest heel turns, I think.
My only thing with the Hogan was he was an asshole before. He was never a huge...
He never stopped being one.
Right, that's what I mean. It wasn't really... it was a little surprising, but...
He was kind of he was honestly one of the worst bad guys backstage too. Hogan is just the worst when it comes to backstage politics.
And then he had sex with his friend's wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
God bless.
He said some unsavory and very racist things too. So
that's not okay. I'm not okay with that one.
No, yeah.
Let's be clear.
Yeah, he's
to be fair, he didn't technically do anything wrong when he had sex with his friend's wife because it was at the request of his friend. So, whatever.
Yeah, that situation got squirrely real fast.
Everything about Terry Bollea's life is squirrely.
My news is Daredevil show's really good.
Yeah, I liked it.
I have not had a chance to watch it.
Yeah, I haven't got to see it yet. It is good though.
No spoilers, or I swear I will travel to Canada. Tariffs be damned, and just fight you.
I'm glad to hear that it's good.
Yep. I'm glad they redid some stuff with it because they had mentioned they originally shot it different and then they made some changes. So glad they made the changes.
I will say the fight scene in the first episode was a little bit disappointing. I think it could have been a lot better.
Really? I liked it because the way it ties into the story, wasn't.
No, I like that. I just
best,
the way that it was filmed. Didn't think it was as good compared to the Netflix fight scenes. I feel like, but then in the second episode, the fight sequence in that one, I think kind of got back to what I feel like it should be.
I think the first fight scene was meant to be more like cinematic and showing different things, so I don't think the whole thing was supposed to be the actual fight. So that's why I think they did it that way. Let us know, people, what you think in comments.
Indeed.
Because I definitely think they meant to do more with it because, like you said, the second fight went right back to like old school Netflix, beat the shit out of each other. I think the first one was just meant to be cinematic with some story to it.
With that, I will get into some of our tabletop dice news here. I wanted to use my little segment at the beginning of our episode to bring everybody's attention to the Lost Odyssey Godfall charity event that is coming up. Their charity page is officially open. They have a goal of raising $25,000, and they're doing so with a glorious, star-studded one-shot played in the Pathfinder system that includes Matt Mercer, Critical Role, Felicia Day from the Guild and founder of Geek and Sundry, Deborah Ann Wool from True Blood and Daredevil, Brandon Roth, who's known from Supermans and Legends of Tomorrow, and Reggie Watts, who's a comedian and musician under the Game Master Bill Rahor from Beetle and Grimm's. I'm unbelievably excited about this event. They're doing it for a really good cause, and they're getting into the Pathfinder system, which is what me and my party personally play. I'm very, very excited. So I want to bring everybody's attention. Go check it out. The official release trailer is out. Give it a watch.
Lost Odyssey?
Yeah, Lost Odyssey Godfall.
Since we're going to be talking about comics, I got to do some comic book news.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So under the new One World Under Doom series that Marvel is doing, they just announced that there's going to be a new Runaway series. And I love the Runaways, so pretty excited about that.
They hadn't touched Runaways in a few years now, right? Like it's been
it's been a good bit.
Yeah, I guess we had the TV show, whatever it was, 15 years ago.
Yeah, for like 1 or 2 seasons.
Yeah, half a season.
Yeah, it felt like, that's for sure. I love the Runaways. So I love Nico. It's like one of my favorite characters. The whole reason I played that Midnight Suns game was because she was in it.
Right.
I was excited to see her in the new Spider-Man show, so that was all good.
It's a character that I feel like hasn't gotten a lot of attention, and so I'm glad to see her kind of coming up. I actually didn't even know anything about her until she showed up in a video game I was playing. I think the concept behind her is really cool. So
I'm sad to hear that they are not doing the Strange Academy show like they talked about doing, but it is what it is. Maybe it'll come back around somewhere.
All right. Well, I am going to take this moment in between our news segment and us getting into the meat and potatoes of tonight's episode to kind of do the call to action stuff, guys. We are still beholden to the great algorithm, and so I want to take this time to let you know that if you're watching the show, you like what you hear, give us a like, give us a comment, all that good stuff. It's really, really important. It's just a small click for you guys, but it is huge for us. Additionally, even more so than that, your comments are the lifeblood around here. We read every single comment. We take all of them seriously, and very frequently we bring them up here on the show. I know I've personally had my mind changed on a couple of things because of viewer comments, and so I enjoy learning new things, and I don't mind being corrected. So, especially as we get in tonight, we're getting into some thick water tonight.
I'm super stubborn, so I really just stick to my opinions. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
With comments.
All that good algorithm stuff, guys. It's much needed. Like, comment, tell your friends about us, leave us on mute in the background. We don't care. And we appreciate your support.
This isn't a filter. I'm really just beautiful. Just putting that.
So, tonight starts off a month-long run for us. We're going to be covering DC Comics. Now, obviously, guys, anybody that's a fan of DC Comics, you know that covering that as a general topic is impossible. Like, in 1 month,
yeah.
There's no way.
Unless we started recording every day.
Yeah, and even then we would be hard pressed.
Yeah, they're like, and I mean, any comic, even if you wanted to like, oh, I'm gonna cover like Dark Horse or Boom or like fuck God Slap.
Yeah,
even smaller things, like it's just like there's so much stuff in comic books, like it'd be crazy to try to do that.
But we did notice a shortfall where we didn't give as much love to DC as we should, and so this month is going to be dedicated to all things DC.
Yep. And Batman.
Who is
DC? He's in DC, Eric. Yeah.
But yeah,
the best part of DC.
This is one of those titles, the logos or whatever. It's a tenured, well-known comic book universe with some of the most famous referenced heroes of all time. And I, for one, am excited to get into it. And if we're going to start into DC Comics, especially with everything that's coming out, and given the tenure of DC Comics, we've got to start with the Man of Steel himself, Superman.
James brought it up when the show started, or before the show started. He's the archetype. He's the basis through which all superheroes were created.
Yeah. I mean, Superman is the superhero. Like I said, he is the one, the progenitor of all that comes.
That's a big word.
Thanks to Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster back in 1938.
34? 38? Let's find out.
Who was first?
Let's Google that.
Captain America or Superman? Who was first?
Superman.
By sure. A huge margin.
June 1938. Bones had it right on the nose.
Yeah, so it was started by the fucking Major. God, what was his name? Y'all guys should be happy. The guy that started what would become DC Comics was a major in the Army Cavalry.
Cav man.
I was in the Cav.
He was maybe
explains a lot about you.
There's a lot of varying stories about him, but he was either the youngest major in the Cav, or at least one of the youngest majors in the Cav. So a pretty accomplished guy in the service. But he liked to write little stories about like the military, and he liked westerns, I believe, as well. So when he got out, he started National Allied Publications.
Okay. NAP.
Yeah. Which one of the things that they eventually start publishing is Detective Comics, which is the one that becomes like very popular, and eventually the name DC comes from their most popular series, Detective Comics.
I didn't know that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
This also gave rise to what we now consider the golden age of comic books. Again, progenitor is a great word because this opened the door for all of them. Yes, we did have major competition coming through with Captain America in 1941, but when you think golden age of comics, I go straight to Superman.
Yeah, so Jerry and Joe were like high school friends. They came up with the idea of Superman when they were like in high school, but it was like a very different version. Originally, Superman looked more like Lex Luthor, and he was a villain with telepathic powers. But eventually, before being actually published, became closer to the Superman we know today. Not quite though, because originally he didn't really have too many powers. More like a Samson or Hercules archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Until 1942-ish, when the radio shows start.
Yep.
The radios, the little serialized radio shows they did, became the basis for the majority of his powers. His like the weakness to kryptonite was introduced in the radio shows. His ability to fly, all kinds of stuff. The name of the Daily Planet was actually the Daily Star before, and became the Daily Planet in the radio shows. Jimmy Olsen became a very prominent character. So there's like a huge jump in kind of the lore that we know now. Well, Eric.
And just in case anybody's wondering, you should absolutely try to check out those old school shows, because old school, I've never heard the Superman ones, but I have heard like old school shows that they used to do on the radio, and it's pretty fucking cool how they do it. The way it sounds and everything, and like the descriptions is pretty neat.
Yeah, the old school radio shows for like comics like Superman and some of the others are absolutely stellar. Honestly, one of the ones I'm pretty sure the archive for those radio programs is still online. Another one I really, really liked as far as a radio program goes was Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
Dude, that was such a good radio show.
Well, and I think it's worth bringing up that the era that we're talking about right now is still very much the Wild West of superhero realms, right? There's not a whole lot of ground to work with. There's not a whole lot of stories that did anything like this. Again, the closest thing they had were the old Odyssey, Grecian heroes, Hercules kind of arcs. And comics before this didn't really come in comic books. Like, there were a few, yes, but when you said comic back in 1940, people thought of comic strips and like the funny papers. We had like Archie and Jughead and shit, right? And so there was nothing to work with here. This is a whole new medium, and there are no rules. Like, they're just kind of figuring it out as they went along. And so I love hearing the story that it's like he underwent a huge evolution in less than 5 years because of multimedia.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it was. I was wrong on the timeline. It's not 1942, because 1941 is actually the first animated appearance of Superman by the same company that did Betty Boop and Popeye. They did an animated Superman, which was voiced by the same person that voiced him in the radio show previously.
That's awesome.
And actually, like the animation actually looks pretty decent. I mean, it's like super old, right? But like,
yeah, but it's got that Art Deco vibe to it and the hard outlines. Like, I think it looks good. I'm about it.
It was actually really kind of like pushing the edge of like the cutting edge, so to speak, of animation at the time, which was really cool. Got an Oscar nomination out of it and everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of revolutionary stuff with that. I remember watching one of the original like 1940s cartoons where, I literally forgot everything else about it other than I remember Superman punching howitzer shells out of the way because they were shooting artillery guns at him, and he was punching them out of the way, and then he tied it up in a knot.
I think it's worth bringing up here that all of this that we're talking about was the groundwork that Gunn is using in the new Superman movie. A lot of it is based on.
I do have some another reason that it's good that we're talking about Superman. Not only is the Superman coming, but there's some specific stories that James Gunn has mentioned that I want to talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Everything from the make of his suit is drawing inspiration from nearly every work Superman has had. And that is actually worth bringing up. We're talking about Superman's origins right now. Superman is probably, he's got to be up there with the most media that a superhero has ever received, right? Like, he's had movies and TV shows and comic books, and he puts everybody else in shame as far as
radio
content.
programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a podcast dedicated to Superman. By the way, I'm just looking at the.
I'm sure there's you could find a podcast dedicated to just basically any superhero. But like Superman is not only like I said, he is kind of the archetype. He's still one of the three most popular superhero characters. The other two being Batman and Spider-Man. Like, those three are consistently throughout time, they have been the most popular characters. And I think the amount of media on Superman probably outstrips both of those.
By an order of magnitude.
Yeah, I mean, just the age of his character, right? Like maybe Batman could be close, but I still would put my money on Superman.
I know they both outsell him in merch and stuff like that.
They certainly do now.
Yeah. Well, you got to think, like, Henry Cavill made a good Superman movie, but before that, like, there was nothing.
Well, you got to
crazy great with Superman.
That depends on that depends on your view of what Superman was. Like, when Superman was the not Christopher Reeves, George Reeves, one of the first people to play a live action Superman, was hugely popular. He was so popular that he couldn't get another job outside of Superman except for playing Superman on an episode of I Love Lucy. Like, that's still and it's actually kind of terribly sad because he actually took his own life, or maybe, I don't know, it's kind of like there's some like murky stuff around that, but and they literally reported it as Superman killed himself. Like, that was the headline.
Yeah, you're talking the Superman movies from like 1978 were major box office blowouts. Superman is one of the most popular, I guess, franchises that we've seen. Within the superhero genre. Yes, here recently, Marvel's had the spotlight for the last, I don't know, 20 years or so. But before that, it was the DC game, and the only one that even stood up in terms of live action production before that was the Hulk with Lou Ferrigno, and
which is debatable. I mean, it was fine, I guess. If people
thing,
really like it was not good, but whatever.
But I mean, you're talking about a hero that the terminology from his comic book and story and radio show worked its way into everyday parlance in the English language. Like, we still refer to things as kryptonite, and
to the point where that's become a very, very common colloquialism, even for people who aren't familiar with comics at all.
Colloquialism.
And so I think that and I'll be the first one to say it. While we're going through his tenure here with Superman, Superman has been the butt of a lot of jokes for comic book nerds for a long time. Especially because of the realm where he landed. Because he was created in the frontier of superhero comic books, his story evolved as time went on, his powers evolved as time went on, the explanation for things evolved as time went on, and you cannot be a top shelf comic book character for, I mean, you're talking nearly a full century at this point, and not have some stuff that gets changed. And that's not including the 2011 New 52 reboot that DC upended everything. And so
the reason for I want to talk about that a little bit too. Like there was a reason for the New 52, and they've done it again recently, and I suspect that they'll do it again before too long. But but from where we were,
so radio shows and animated shorts in the theater.
First animated shorts, 1941, which is like that's the thing about how long ago that was.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking the only other comic books that you got around this time, like we had the first appearance of Captain America was in 1941. And the other comics that you got were very much, you had GI soldiers because World War II. You had detective stuff, Dick Tracy-esque stuff going
Doc
around.
Savage.
Yeah, Doc Savage. And you kind of had the strange tales starting to kind of pick up and become a thing. Because up until 1953, there wasn't even really a lot of attention on sci-fi in general, right? Like, everything was kind of detective stories at the time. And I honestly think that it was a lot of detective stories at the time because of DC Comics bringing attention to the genre. Because you had the dime store novel, detective novel stuff going on, but there wasn't really a lot of attention on
it. Like late 1800s, early 1900s really led into the dime store novel like boom on stuff like that, and then it carried over into like real world events, because I know the Great Depression had a ton of dime store novel stuff that came out, but that's going to get into a history lecture, and we're not doing that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I'm not educated.
Okay, so we have those sweet animations. Anime, that's what it was too. Yeah, I had this fucking discussion the other day. Like we argue about like what anime and cartoon is, but when you like talk to people in other places, they just call like American cartoons like American anime, right? So
yes, I think that's the answer right there, right?
Yeah,
it's animated. 'Tis anime.
It's like Warhammer. It's all canon and none of it's canon. Just go with what feels right.
I don't want to derail things. I just popped in my head because I said that. But so funny story. A lot of comics that came out during like World War II and in that era. Obviously, a very limited run to what we have now. So they've become very rare and very valuable if you have them in good shape. But in particular, Superman, the comics during World War II ran a recycling campaign inside the comics, and so they kind of artificially boosted their own value because people were recycling their issues. I just thought that was a funny little.
That's pretty cool.
None of it was on purpose. Like they didn't do it to boost value. Like nobody knew that comics were going to be thousands of dollars in the future, right? But they did that just because they were trying to, be frugal with things during that time period.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's where you get the icon, right? Like the Action Comics Superman icon of him carrying like the VW Bug, right? Is huge. Everybody that gets into the comic universe has seen that image. It has been reproduced and reused 10 million times, and given the era, I'm not surprised that there was a frugality that led to a shortage. But it did lead to. I mean, for a long time, he had the record as the most valuable comic book in the world, right?
Yeah, probably. I don't know what it is now. Maybe one of the Fantastic Four #1 or some shit like that. I don't know.
Marvel.
Let's see what we got here. No, Action Comics #1, where he's carrying the VW. Still the #1. $6 million.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, he's got the first and second, because Superman #1 is at 5.3 million.
That's a crazy amount of money for a comic book. Can you imagine?
And then Spider-Man, then Cap. Whew, man, wild. $6 million for Action Comics #1.
I wonder what the most recent high selling comic was. It doesn't matter. Anyway, back to Superman. So post World War II. Actually, World War II is kind of an interesting time for Superman too, because you're writing stories and they kind of include things that are relevant to what's going on, right? So they of course are writing about Superman beating up Nazis, but they have to do it in a way because he could literally, if he was real, could have just ended World War II, right? Like there wouldn't have been a World War II because fucking Superman. What are they gonna do? They're gonna lose. Right. But obviously it's a story, it's a fiction, and they wanted to include things, but also be respectful to not just the U.S., but what the Allies in Europe were going through. So they don't want to just put Superman in these pages just destroying the Nazis without any help. So they kind of put him into more little isolated stories, which I think is interesting. Probably the right answer to. But again, just another fun little fact of the times. After that, though, comics kind of fall out of favor for a little while, and as they kind of psychically do, for a number of reasons, I guess. I can't really tell you why. It just happens.
I want to say they were down for, it was almost a decade before comics really started to bounce back after World War II. I want to say it was the mid-50s before there was another big upswing.
Was there ever a scene of Superman punching Hitler?
I don't know if there was a scene of him punching Hitler per se. Definitely of him punching Nazis.
It's funny because I've never seen anything about that. I always knew there was. I just had never seen it. But if you look, when they brought Captain America, that was such a big thing for him, was him fighting Nazis when he first came out.
Yeah, but
interesting they avoid it with Superman every single time.
There's a massive power discrepancy between Cap and Superman. Superman literally could solve every problem ever. Cap can only go so far and do so many things. He's a guy with a shield.
Yeah. Well,
he's slightly stronger than most people.
Yeah.
Here's where we get into the narrative of Superman that I think is actually super cool. Now, this doesn't always stay consistent. Obviously, the comic book storyline and writing is going to flow with the audience and what they want and that kind of stuff. But we do get to see Superman, because of when he was written and how he was written, kind of embody that thing, that niche that I think is the most compelling thing about his storytelling, right? And that's not the fact that he is this god monster on Earth. It's the fact that he's trying very much to be human. The key elements of his story are that he was raised in Kansas. He's just kind of an American ideal. And to answer your question, Eric, yes, he actually punched Hitler before Captain America did on February 27th, 1940. Siegel and Schuster published a 2-page imaginary story in the pages of Look magazine to show how Superman would have ended the war.
I will say, yeah, obviously there is that Superman trying to be, but that kind of focus on that theme didn't actually really come until prominence to like much later, actually. So earlier on, Superman was popular because he was very, very powerful, but he was a fucking good guy. Like he always tried to be a good guy. Like he didn't want to just go knock Hitler's head off like he easily could. He didn't want to be Homelander, right? Like
Yeah.
he wanted to be a good guy.
He didn't want
like,
to be Batman.
Yeah, and that's like, especially during the times, like that was actually pretty important, and that's why a lot of people enjoyed those stories. Because you're like, this guy's awesome, but he cares about the little people too, right? Like in some of the shows, you have him like not catching the bad guys because he's saving somebody first, and so the bad guys get away for right now. But it's fine because he saved people, right? Like he didn't let somebody die to go mete out justice.
Well, and that's where we start getting the archetypes for like the most evil villains in the comic book universes are the ones that force the heroes into that situation where it's like you can save the people or you can catch me, and you see that trope really skyrocket.
I mean, that was also one of the, from a storytelling aspect, specifically with characters like Superman, that's how you win. You win by survival, right? Because Superman's obviously going to triumph, right, at the end. But you win by survival, so you can go back and try it again. You win by survival. So they always set up those things where it's like, well, you could catch me, or a bomb's about to blow up, this city square in Wakahika, Kansas. So you can either save these people out there, or you can let me like run off away laughing maniacally here in Metropolis. And of course, he's going to go save the people.
Well, yeah. And I mean, Eric, you popped up about Batman again a minute ago. But when you look at DC's heroes, even the one, because you have a wide range of heroes that make up DC stuff, right? If we just look at the JLA alone, we have a huge spectrum of heroes. But the thing you got to remember about DC heroes a lot of the times is that the storytelling was done through action instead of it being like right in your face. And so when you talk about things like Superman and like Batman, if you look at how they go about and how they do things, the concept that the modern internet and modern dissection of the storytelling has given you is just inaccurate. And so you look at Superman, he is the Man of Steel. Yes, they didn't know exactly what his powers were. I actually really like that from a meta narrative at a standpoint, because he didn't know what he was for a very long time. Dude crash landed on a planet in an egg pod as an infant and was raised by farm folk in Kansas. Like, dude had nothing. You look at Batman, yes, his stories have gone all over the place, but there's a few key features you have to remember about Batman. And that's that Batman, first off, yes, he's famous for like not using guns and not killing people, and that can be debated because of physics for a long time. But unlike several other heroes, Batman does not catch the villains and take them to the police a large portion of the time. Batman chases down psychotic or broken individuals and takes them to an asylum for help. Like, and the comics have always painted Arkham Asylum as this dark, gringy, like experiments, evil place. But when you really think about what that would look like in any modern context, he is taking psychologically damaged individuals to a doctor's office to get help. And so, as dark and gritty as they want to portray Batman, that's not what he does. And I think Superman really sets that tone of ideal for being the guy that protects the weak, protects those that need protecting. And you get a character that is as tough as he needs to be and as strong as he needs to be in order to get that done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's always tougher and he's always stronger, right?
Yeah.
Like you say. Which I think makes for. I mean, okay, so I have said it before, and I think a lot of people do. Like, Superman can be a very boring character. I mean, so can Captain America, right? Like they're the Boy Scouts, like.
Yeah.
But I think that's also like I was talking about with like looking at the success of their media. Like nowadays, and you look back and you're like, it's okay. But at the time, like that was like an archetype that people enjoyed, right? Like so now, I think maybe our culture, like there's still people that enjoy it, but our culture largely like we want something a little bit more exciting than just like these Boy Scout characters.
That's why Injustice did so well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
you look at the time with World War II, and that was a very tumultuous point in our history. There was a great deal of scarcity amongst the majority of the world. There was a great deal of evil in the world, and having a character that not only was tougher than the bad guys, but believed in, that good guy mode, I can see why that was very appealing. Absolutely.
And it still is, honestly. Like, that trope exists for a reason still, like where you have the Boy Scout deal. It's just like the fad right now is having the moral struggle. It's like having the power, and then like how much is too much, how involved do I need to be, where's the line, things like that make those characters compelling because it adds layer besides they're the good guy, right? But again, people still gravitate towards comics, towards superheroes, because
they want a good guy to win.
They want a good guy to cheer for. And everybody does. Everybody wants a good guy to cheer for.
That's every story.
Yeah.
Like every medium. Like, I don't know. I do like some nobody wins stories sometimes. That's why I read Warhammer.
Yeah. Well, and you start looking at his analogs that we have in the modern media, right? I think it's actually really good timing for a new Superman movie to come out, because the other analogs we've gotten have fallen into the trope of, fear propaganda being the narrative message, where it's like, hey, if you look behind the curtain and behind the production, these are really terrible people. You start looking at things like Homelander in The Boys. You start looking at Omni-Man in Invincible, and a lot of other ones where the message is that this guy is an unstoppable force of nature, and if you look behind the image that is put on your TV screen, he's a terrible alien thing, and you should fear him. And Superman, especially during this time in history, I like the fact that everything about Superman landed exactly like it did. I like the fact that he wears bright, brilliant costume with the red and the blue, because ultimately he's a scary alien that is an unstoppable force on our planet, and he doesn't want people to be afraid of him. He doesn't want children to be afraid of him.
That's literally what Corn Sweat said about his costume in the new Superman movie, is that he wanted it to be the underwear on the outside. So it's kind of silly, right? Because he is a god among men, and he doesn't want to be that. He doesn't want to portray that to people. But that is kind of like where the story has evolved. So that, like you were talking about, where we have this super powerful being who's trying to be a human, and that's actually what I wanted to talk about in terms of what James Gunn actually said, that he's like where he got some of his ideas for the themes of the show is from a run by Grant Morrison, who is a great writer. He wrote for JLA. And he invented fucking Animal Man, who is a smaller but awesome character. But yeah, so he wrote a story called All-Star Superman, which is a story where Superman gets overdosed essentially by the yellow sun energy and becomes like hella strong Superman. Like, he's faster, he's stronger, he's smarter. Like, he just becomes better, but he also essentially gets like cellular degeneration from it. So he's like working on like a limited timeline now.
He's on the clock,
trying to be and this is a thing that earlier iterations of this didn't work out. They tried to make Superman relatable by like depowering him, with various types of kryptonite or whatever. Like, oh, he's a normal man now. Like, everybody can relate. But like, that's not really that relatable, right? Because in the end of the day, he's still like an alien with superpowers. So they like, this is a better take on that, because now you're like, yeah, he is who he is. He's a fucking god, but he's also like trying to live a life. Like, he's trying to go spend time with Lois. Like, he's trying to do things. He's like walking the family dog. Like, he's trying to do things that matter as a person, right? Like, that you think would matter. You've got cancer and you're dying, right? Like, things that you would want to do, and that's what he's also trying to do, but just as Superman.
Yeah.
I think All Star Superman is I think it's probably the best Superman story. It's probably like a little bit debatable, but like, it's certainly top 5. I think it's probably the best, but I highly recommend it for everybody.
Well, and I know in the new in the trailer we just got for the new Superman, the only thing that we really saw was him crashing down in some tundra, presumably, Antarctica, and he's bleeding. He's coughing up blood. He's hurt.
His Fortress of Solitude was in North Pole, wasn't it?
Yeah. Either way, that was probably after the fight with whatever that evil being
monster thing is.
It's probably like a clone of him or something.
I think the most important thing we saw in that was Crypto. I think that's
everybody loves Crypto.
Don't shake your head. Crypto's dope.
For those of you that don't know, Crypto was a dog that the Kryptonians originally put into a space pod as kind of like the monkey in space aspect and launched it into space. And so it's a alien dog. It's an alien Labrador.
It turns out they put a lot of things into those pods and launched them into space throughout time.
Yeah. It's weird, right?
You keep finding more of them.
I'll give James Gunn a chance.
I'm actually really excited for this. So everybody here recently, let's take a little segment here because we're about 40 minutes in. I want to talk about superhero movies, the upcoming Superman movie, and kind of the superhero fatigue that several fans are starting to feel. And I've heard a lot of people that just say they're tired of superhero movies. They don't want them anymore. It feels like that's all that's in the movie theater, because that's what's getting kind of the airtime, right? That's what's getting the advertisement time. Are these
there have been a lot. Like I understand the people that are feeling the fatigue,
and it's frustrating to me because it still only makes up a small percentage of all the movies that are being made. But a lot of these movies have the same kind of vibe, right? Where they're the equivalent of the 80s action movie, where you have these gritty heroes that just can't be stopped, and they stuff the cigars in their mouth while they go off and shoot a bunch of bad guys. I think Superman could be a breath of fresh air in regards to the superhero genre with that, because we do get to see that kind of Paragon archetype that we just don't get to see anymore. Even with other Paragon style characters like Captain America, they did away with him after the Infinity War. Like, all right, cool. I haven't seen the new Captain America movie with Falcon picking up the shield. I've heard mixed reviews, but even Thor, all the superhero stories we've been getting have been about pseudo anti-hero, kind of bad guys, and our good paragons, the ones that are icons we can look up to, leave, die, or quit. And I would like to see. I want to see a traditional Superman.
I mean, just real quick, Travis. That's not necessarily true. We just had a bunch of movies and shows that didn't do well. Like we had the Marvels, which was nothing but good guys. Like those are quintessential good guys. It's just that I actually haven't watched it, so I can't say if it was good or not. It didn't do well, right? Actually, from what I've heard, I think that I would probably enjoy it. I just haven't watched it yet. I'll get around to it eventually, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, those movies are still coming out. They just realized that they can't mass produce. Hopefully, they've realized. They seem to have realized that they just can't mass produce a bunch of content, and it's all going to be good. It's the same problem with Star Wars, right? Like, there's just like cranking out all the stuff because it's popular, and that doesn't work. Obviously,
it's the same with so many movie types nowadays, man. Like it's not just these. It's all kinds of different things nowadays. You get a lot of the same action movies. You get a lot of the same everything. It's just write a good fucking story. Plain and simple. It could be anything you want in it. It could be talking dogs. It could be fuzzies. It could be whatever you'd like in life if you just tell a good story. There was a lot of really piss poor stories that Marvel did. You could see that because Falcon or the new Captain America's done really well. Like it's done exceptionally well. It's like compared to like anything recent for Marvel. So you could tell it's just a story. That's all it comes down to at the end of the day. They could say all the bad things they want about the movie, but if the story's good, people will watch it.
Yeah, well, talking about the oversaturation, every publisher of everything is guilty of that, especially when a franchise gets real big or has a sudden hit or a big uptick or whatever. We saw that with, honestly, content related to, of all things, Dungeons and Dragons, with the success from Critical Role, and then having a movie that did really well to go along with that, in that same vein. And then you just suddenly had everybody and their dog trying to churn out some type of fantasy genre, or people sitting around like playing Dungeons and Dragons. And a lot of those, there were more misses than there were hits from any of that. And it's the same way with that. You cast a wide enough net, yeah, you're gonna have some duds, but you are gonna have more hits.
Well, and I think that a large part of what the new Superman movie is doing to try to break out of that, I think is going to be a lot of fun. I know with the Marvels, a large focus of that was on mental health. You got an exploration of like the different stages of being a hero and the toll that it takes on you. And that was kind of a theme of that movie is being a hero sucks. It's a shitty job. And, you start looking at what Gunn is doing with the new Superman movie, and he is drawing inspiration. And he's flat out said he's drawing inspiration from movies that he feel like we need right now and that we want right now. I know a large part of the filmography and the cinematography he's using is coming out of Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick, both of which were amazing successes. And with Maverick coming back, nobody knew we wanted, another Top Gun movie. And then Maverick blew the box office away and did really, really well. And so it struck me as interesting, and without getting too deep into the details, but creating a subject right now that is kind of that American ideal, American dream kind of vibe at a time when America is at one of its most divided is a bold move to me.
So an example of this is as Survive mentioned in the comments, the Fast and the Furious, right? Like how many freaking Fast and the Furious movies are there? There's too many. The answer is there's too many.
There's too many.
So, another thing that I was thinking about, man,
there's not
while
enough.
We were talking,
I think we could have Fast and the Furious in space.
Is the reason that we had in the late 90s, early 2000s, all these fucking superhero movies, but everybody was dressed in black leather, is just because the Matrix was popular. Even though, like, the Matrix wearing leather wasn't why it was popular, right? Like, the fucking leather outfits didn't make the Matrix good, but for some reason they thought it would, so they made everything wear fucking leather. Yeah.
Look same? Is same.
It's just like when something's popular, they're like, can we copy it and reproduce it real quick right now? Let's get a whole bunch of it out of there and make money.
Another example being John Wick with a whole bunch of like knockoff action films that tried to mimic that but didn't capture the essence. They got the action down, but the action wasn't the only thing about John Wick that made it a success. There was multiple levels to it, and that franchise has obviously fallen off as more and more people got addicted to the action of the show and less about
they wanted body count.
But anyway, we've deviated significantly from the topic at hand. I think we covered pretty much. I mean, like the genesis of Superman. So I want to ask you guys. Actually, let's start with like Eric. You asked in the comments, like, what is everybody's favorite Superman costume? So what do you guys like have for what is your favorite Superman costume?
Ooh.
Henry Cavill, what he wore.
Henry Cavill was based on.
The whole thing looked a little bit different. It was just neat.
The way it recent evolution of the Superman costume.
And there's nothing against like what the guy's wearing in the new one. Like that's your more traditional looking, original Superman. But the way it was sleek and stuff, and in that one, it was really good. Like that was my favorite Superman out of all of them.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to me, the new Superman suit is evocative. I cannot remember what comic it was from, but when you look at the S on Superman, right, his new one's got a very diagonal, very hard-edged S kind of icon to it. I really, really enjoy that because it both keeps the Superman symbol there in the same colors with the yellow outline like we would see in the old animations, but it's still different enough that you could believe that it is a symbol from Krypton that stood for hope, if I remember correctly. And I like the fact that they have that iconic Superman S on his chest where you get to pull open the shirt and see it, right? But it's different enough from the way we would draw or artistically depict an S you could believe that it's an alien symbol. And so the comic book that draws from that, it had a Superman. He was kind of, I don't know, you get that upside down triangular Superman, right, where he's built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you get that peculiar hard edged S. That's been my favorite Superman suit.
What about you, Travis?
Probably the Absolute Power suit has been my favorite. It's very, like, it's still blue, but it's kind of like that. It's a very much like darker, like deeper blue. And it doesn't have the hard border so much around the S, but it's still offset by the red and the yellow. So you still get that traditional look.
Absolute Superman, I think is the best suit for me, but not only because of I like the aesthetic of it, but I like that it's a fucking AI like organic like techno organic suit, which I fucking think is a cool addition.
Oh, you like this? Cool, I just like the way it looks. Like I liked the darker colors. I liked the borderless S where you didn't have like the hard border around it.
Well, and it depends on how they start doing things, right? And y'all heard me bitch about this with the bleeding edge Iron Man suit, right? I'm one that very much enjoys having classifications of powers. When you look at DC, nearly everything falls into the broad categories of they're a tech hero, they're a meta hero, or they're a magic hero. And when it came to Tony Stark's AI suit, his bleeding edge suit that was all nano and kind of like flowed out of him, the lines kind of disappeared between what Tony Stark was and what Venom is. Like his suit was basically just it was a symbiote.
I disagree entirely with what you're saying because of the premise of like characters not evolving exist that does not exist because it happens in DC too. Like you're talking about a specific Iron Man that became like very like I mean, okay, like it's super advanced science and it seems kind of magical-esque, but like there's literally stories of like Superman Prime who can do magic.
Oh no, absolutely, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't know, maybe it's a deal where I like having the iconic heroes hold on to that, right? Like that was part of their imagery, that was part of their. And with Iron Man specifically, I can see why narratively it would evolve, but that was part of his kryptonite. It was part of his weakness, is that it was armor, it was external. He was just human until he got in the suit. And so it feels very much like, hey, we're gonna have Superman, but now he's cool with kryptonite. Like kryptonite doesn't do anything to him anymore.
I mean, that's also happened.
I agree. I
mean, it's fine having a problem with that, but like, well, what I'm saying is that also exists in DC. So yeah. Your example of like I like DC because it fits into boxes, that applies to Marvel too.
Oh no,
they just break those boxes occasionally.
Well, and I think when it comes to the broad classifications, I didn't mean to imply that like, oh, this was a problem Marvel has compared to DC. That's not it at all. In fact, Marvel, I feel like, opens it up a little bit more, where you start seeing superheroes like Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Nick Fury that are more of a skill-oriented hero.
They're all not. They're all like super soldiers. Like Black Widow, literally super soldier. Nick Fury, literally super soldier. Hawkeye, actually, I think is just a skill hero. Like he's just a fucking death guy that's good with a bow.
Yeah.
But
well, and you see a few of those in DC with like Green Arrow, for example. Oliver Queen, just kind of a rich kid with cool tricks.
That's all of the Batmans. All of them.
Yeah.
Every Batman.
Oh no, absolutely agree. And
that's true. He had the weird resurrection power on one of the arcs where
the Lazarus
he was
water.
The one using the Lazarus pit.
Yeah, but that's not a main continuity thing.
No, that was I think that was a standalone arc.
There's Red Hood. Red Hood is also Jason Todd, who was brought back the Lazarus pit. So I guess maybe he's not technically like might be a little bit meta human.
Well, and then you look at Superman, and I guess my point to all of it is that when you look at Superman, you have this alien that's empowered by the light of our sun, which, okay, I'll take the premise, sure. And then you just give him a techno-organic suit. On the one hand, he doesn't need it. It's like putting the Iron Spider armor on Spider-Man. Like, he doesn't need it. But on the other hand, he does need something that can put up with what he can do, and cotton's just not going to hold up to re-entry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, polyester's probably not the best fabric material for.
Well, so this Superman also didn't grow up in Smallville.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like he's an adult when he comes to Earth.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's like a different. Also, I mean, this is again. So all right, when we go back to like New 52 real quick. The reason New 52 happened was because like shit was just getting so fucking weird. Like continuity was just getting overly complex.
Kind of butchered.
So they're like, fuck it, reset.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta have a hard reset every once in a while.
And that's actually why New 52 happened. It was a concerted effort to make it easier to get into DC Comics, basically.
Well, and I know New 52 is when we started seeing the Superman outfit like we saw with Henry Cavill in. It did not have the red briefs like on the outside. He had a much more streamlined, kind of slim fit appearance.
Which also a good run of Superman, actually, to Superman Rebirth by Peter Tomasi. Pretty good run too that came out of that time. That was Superman and Lois. It skipped the origin story and just kind of continued with Superman being married to Lois and then raising Jonathan, which is like a cool story for like it's like Superman as a dad trying to be again like it's another good story of humanizing Superman without just like you don't have powers anymore.
Depowering him.
Yeah. I think one of the I wish I could remember which arc it was from. But it was him struggling to just go back to the farm and then use like simple tools.
You could be thinking about Kingdom Come Superman.
Was it Kingdom Come? Because like I just remember
Kingdom Come. He's like retired. He has like the ponytail and shit. Like,
yeah.
Kingdom Come. That's after he killed Joker. So that's another story where he kills Joker. I think it was actually an accident. He's like, I'm gonna fucking retire, and so he goes back to the farm just to be a fucking farmer.
Yeah, I remember him being like, okay, like this needs to be tightened, and then like not really realizing that he's just obscenely strong, and so he's tightening it and just rips this thing off. Like
that's honestly one of my favorite Superman quotes of all time. Is he's sitting there and he's talking to like I think it's the JLA, but I could be wrong. And he's like, living here is like living in a world made out of cardboard and tissue paper. And it's not the exact quote. I don't remember exactly what it is, but that concept of how he always has to be delicate with everything that he does, I think it really resonates. It's kind of cool.
Okay, we talked about costumes. What is everybody's favorite Superman story? I already mentioned All-Star Superman's probably mine, but Absolute Superman's quickly becoming a good one too, and I can't not mention Red Sun Superman. Also really good.
Red Sun Superman is really good. I think so it's not my favorite Superman, but as far as the story goes, the one that came after Injustice, I think it was Gods and Monsters.
I believe so.
Yeah, where Superman basically he gets so disenfranchised with the way that the average person on Earth is behaving that he's like, all right, you can't be trusted anymore, and takes over the planet. That is such a wild ride to me, and probably my favorite Superman story.
What about you, Eric? You got a favorite?
So I don't mess with DC a whole lot, so like I can't even like to name one. Like it's just difficult. I thought the storyline, like the Brandon Routh Superman storyline, in that movie was really good. I think, and it wasn't his fault. I think it was just like some of the dialect and the fighting was just shitty, is why the movie didn't turn out very good. But I thought that was pretty cool, especially because that was like the way they did that revamp, and it sucked that it didn't work. But it's either that one or like just the Injustice, where like he goes fucking postal and kills Joker.
So that's actually not the first. Like Superman Injustice came out at a good time for it, and it became popular. There's actually like several other variations of Superman that are super evil. Like
I'm sure there is.
They started doing this thing. DC came with Earth 1, which was like Golden Age Earth, and Earth 2 was Silver Age Earth. Earth 3 was the this weird Ultraman. Superman was Ultraman, and it's all based like the whole society is based on like it's fucking the Viltrumites. They're the Viltrumites. Like the strong are in charge, and Superman is the strongest, so he is in charge.
I'm sure
There's also rumors that Ultraman's going to be making an appearance in the new Superman movie. So.
Yeah, there is. I don't think that he will be in the new movie.
Hope it's Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk is Ultraman. There's a choice.
Alan Tudyk is in the new Superman film, by the way.
Well, we got Nathan Fillion coming in as Guy Gardner. Despite the stupidest haircut I've ever seen, I'm really excited to see.
It's Guy Gardner haircut.
Accurate,
so
yeah.
It is 100% like accurate. I don't like it on Guy Gardner either. But
I gotta say, probably Krypton Returns.
Solid. Actually.
I know it catches a lot of flack because it involves time travel, and that's always like
the bottled city.
Yeah, it's also a standalone, so it doesn't really like bleed into any of the other arcs. But my biggest thing about it was like the struggle of like him trying to see like, is this real? Like, why am I remembering things differently?
Mm-hmm. Well, and on the subject of time travel, I still think my favorite DC storyline in general of all time is Flashpoint. I think Flashpoint Paradox is one of the coolest runs ever.
Animated film was so good.
So good.
I mean,
I do want to shout out to
DC fucking kills it. Is those animated films?
Oh, those animated movies are so good.
Have they made a bad one?
I don't think so. Like, there's some that I like better than others, but
I'm trying to think if they've made a bad one in recent memory.
I mean, that ninja one with Batman was kind of iffy.
I've heard people say that Gotham by Gaslight was a little boring, but I thought it was amazing. So
I love the stories when they showcase Bruce Wayne's like detective abilities and not just I made another super gadget.
Well, that's why the Batman was so good, and I'm really upset that that's not getting incorporated into James Gunn's world.
I actually love the
stupid
Batman.
to me.
I do want to take a minute.
Robert Pattinson's like one of the best, I think.
Yeah, I think the Batman, like Pattinson's Batman, was an amazing story. I'm so excited for the next one, which I think is 2027.
Something like that, yeah.
We have Clayface coming out soon, so I want to shout out Michael from our chat who brought up. He's reading a good series, the Batman versus Predator series. Dude, that particular run is a thorn in my ass. I own nearly every Predator comic. I'm missing 12, and half of them are that run. I am super excited for the Spider-Man vs. Predator series that's coming out now that Marvel's got the Predator stuff. Now, I know we're getting close up on the hour, so while I'm thinking about it, before we deviate anymore, Bones, I wanted to ask... what you got?
This is on topic for you. I just want you to know that I've been buying up all those. And then just stockpiling them. So I've got like eight bookshelves that you can't see. Actually, you see all those white boxes right there? I tricked people into thinking that those are magic cards. They're not. That's just every print of the Batman Predator that you can't find are in those boxes. So
Bones,
I make a trip once a year just to buy them up out of New Mexico.
Keep me going insane. I know I've brought this up on previous episode, Bones. Do we know anything about the upcoming Marvel DC overlap?
Nothing new that I've heard yet.
Okay.
Now I'm sure it's going to be another like similar to Amalgam, which was a fun series.
It'll be hush hush until it comes out.
Yeah, I mean we'll know prior to a release, maybe a couple months at most. But so
all right. So on the subject of favorites and that kind of stuff, let's talk about Superman's powers to close out the episode.
That's what I was actually going to bring up, something along those lines as well.
Plot.
So obviously he's got plot.
To varying extents, though, because there are two Supermans that have plot as a power.
Yeah. So Batman also has plot as a power.
Dude, superheroes kind of in general. Like some of them, they go through the effort of explaining why plot is their power. Like the girl in the X-Men that is like she can't lose.
The Unbeaten.
Yeah. I cannot remember her name, but
Isha the Unbeaten, I think, maybe something like that.
So when we look at Superman, we get a list of powers that I think like are the most iconic for Superman, right? We got super strength because homie's got it in spades. We got flight. We got effectively super speed.
No, not effectively. It's super speed.
It is super speed. Yeah.
He's sometimes faster or close, at least as close to as fast as the Flash.
Yeah, I say that effectively simply because he doesn't, or I guess he has. Canonically, he doesn't have any connection to the Speed Force.
No, he's just fast.
He's just fast.
Well, it comes with being really strong, is you can push off really hard.
And then of course you get, I guess the next one would be laser vision,
frost breath, X-ray. Oh well, he's got fucking subatomic vision actually.
Yeah,
which is
not to mention
crazy.
super senses in general, where it's like
he can
hear the other side of the planet.
Just faster than a speeding bullet, stronger than a locomotive.
He can leap over a building.
Yeah. The ability to jump over tall buildings in a single bound.
Let's not forget that he's environmentally contained. Like he can just go to space.
Captain America could whoop his ass.
No, he could not.
That is base Superman. There are some more interesting versions of Superman. There is the Cosmic Armor Superman, who is probably the most powerful, whose powers are literally fourth wall awareness, ability to manipulate plots, everything. His powers are everything. There's also Milkman Superman, whose milk can change the plot.
That's interesting.
So creepy. That is
so creepy. But yeah, no, and I wanted to do a section on like his rogues gallery because I think Superman's got some of the coolest rogues out there.
That's Bizarro.
One thing, I'm super sad that they keep just trying to redo Lex Luthor. I love Lex Luthor as a villain; he's fine, but like he does have so much more than just Lex Luthor.
Oh yeah,
like
Doomsday.
Yeah,
but the problem is if you're going to make a series, you have to have Lex Luthor in there. Just like every time they do Batman, they do the Joker. It's the same concept. Like you can't have.
Well,
you can't.
But we
like,
did do
you can't
the
make
Batman
this movie
didn't have the Joker.
Batman didn't have the Joker.
And it was one of the best Batman stories.
But it ended with knowing that the Joker's coming.
But they could do that with a Superman movie too. They could do a movie where Lex isn't the primary. He's just like about him, and maybe he does some things, minor things in there, where you have a Bizarro or something else.
Bizarro is my favorite. I love Bizarro.
Dude, Bizarro is so wild.
Superman never does well enough to have like series of movies. Like he just doesn't. Like Batman can have a series all on his own.
I think your understanding of Superman is far too narrow because he is
Christopher Reeves had a ton.
How many series has he done?
Superman?
Like, live action series. Batman.
Hold
You've got the four movies that they did with Michael Keaton, and then Val Kilmer, and then George, and then he was the last one, right? Yeah. And then you got the three series of what's his face? Why can't Christian Bale? And then you got the new ones now with.
So Christopher Reeves is Superman 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, hold up. Because before Christopher Reeves, we had Kirk Allen.
Yeah, but I'm not going that far back because Batman had shit before fucking Michael Keaton too. He had stuff
a little bit, but he had.
He still did.
They didn't have movies, so.
No, not really.
They did a movie with the original What's His Face
with Adam West.
One though. And I'm not sure that they did an Adam West movie.
They did
maybe.
A bunch of like.
They did a bunch of like
straight to like but they weren't movies. They were a series of episodic TV shows clipped into a movie. They weren't a standalone film.
For Superman movies, then we have Superman in 1948. But if we discount that one on Eric's whatever, then we have Atom Man in 1950, Superman 2, 3, 4, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, and Black Adam.
No, you missed Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Superman Returns.
Yeah.
And then the Richard Donner cut.
But I will agree, in recent history, like Batman has been more successful as far as the movies go. But they kind of stopped. They didn't make Superman in the 90s like movies because he's not a dark, gritty character, so he wouldn't have fit the 90s aesthetics.
Well, you start looking at
even when they made it,
so
when you look,
but it's so much easier to write a Batman story because you can it's easier to make Batman relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Without a ton of that's the joy of comics versus film. Film, you have 2 hours to give me a complete relatable character that I can connect with via dialogue and imagery.
I feel fucking Henry Cavill, like Man of Steel, such a fucking underrated movie.
No, it was. That's what I'm saying. Like that was good.
but in comics you have so much more that you can do. You have
Marvel
dialogue, you
does
have
it though.
imagery, you have page after page after page after page. You have this entire series where you can slowly develop things. Film is always the same way. You need to connect with the character immediately.
And we're also
Marvel
talking about
does it though.
well, we're also talking about like so Marvel was a concerted effort to make a franchise.
Yeah.
DC didn't do that with Batman even. Like they were just making Batman. Like they were just having people that wanted to make Batman movies. Like
Right.
they weren't making a concerted effort, right? So yeah, Marvel was successful because they've made a concerted effort, and they made it like kind of like. And in fact, one of their most successful franchises was the Guardians of the Galaxy, which now we have somebody at DC making that concerted effort for DC. So we'll see.
But I would say prior to probably 19, I'm going to go with 97. Superman was probably the one out front. The only ones up there were Fantastic Four. Because you got to think, before the 90s, if you asked somebody who their favorite superhero was, if they knew what a superhero was at all, they were going to say Fantastic Four, because the Fantastic Four had like the popularity bracket all the way through the late 60s, through the 70s, and into the 80s, because they were astronauts.
Yeah, I mean, you probably still could have got a bunch of Superman answers as well.
Yeah,
you would have got Superman and Batman still, but
I don't even think Batman really took off until Burton did Batman.
I mean, Batman was pretty popular before that. I mean, Detective Comics were
like popular. Batman was huge. He's like one of the highest selling superheroes, more than Superman.
Eric, I gotta say, I think your perspective on it is just wildly skewed. I think you're looking from such a weird position on it.
How's it skewed? They literally made multiple trilogies of Batman. They never did it with Superman.
We just proved to you that they made so many Superman movies.
One set of with what's his face, but after that, they made they made Man of Steel. That was basically a standalone. They made the Brandon Routh movie, basically a standalone.
That was before Man of Steel, but yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Because if you count Batman and Superman, they're both fucking in it. So that's both of them. That's not one or the other. And then if you count the other movies, the Justice League movies, Batman is also in it. So you can't just count them for him. That goes for both of them. Batman literally had a run with Michael Keaton and with Christian Bale that far exceeded anything Superman's done. Superman did better on TV. That's it.
You're arguing now,
here's your actual numbers. You ready for the actual numbers? So, Batman, approximate total sales of 484 million. Spider-Man below Batman at 387 million. Superman sits on the top of the box with over 600 million in approximate sales. Like, Superman is the most popular comic book character.
And, and also as far as your success for movies go, yes, the Batman movies have been more successful monetarily because they're movies that were made more recently.
No, that is part of it, but they still made Man of Steel recently. They still made the Brandon Routh movie somewhat recently. So, it's not just that, because they could have made more Brandon Routh movies.
But also, those aren't because of but you can't argue that they didn't do well because it was Superman, though. They didn't do well because the movies were not executed well. Though I still think Man of Steel is fucking super underrated,
wildly underrated.
I agree with that. Like I said, Henry Cavill was
I don't
really
think
great
the Brandon
Superman
Ross movie was very good, right? Versus the Batman movies were. Well, I don't know. You could argue about the early 90s movies if they're good or not.
The George Clooney one was terrible.
But the Dark Knight movies are phenomenal movies, and
yes. I'm waiting to see what James Gunn does. It'll be interesting.
But I will say, Survive. They mentioned also Batman's Rogues Gallery is also much easier to put to screen.
Yeah, they're not
Superman.
Wildly super powered on a good variety of them. You can really pick and choose ones that are easier to write and depict.
Batman's in essence a street level hero. It's just like watching Daredevil on Netflix, right? You can put that on there pretty cheap because most of them are not that crazy. You get a couple outliers, but for the most part, it's like Penguin. He's a fucking gangster. That's his whole thing.
He has no powers.
is a guy with two faces. His face is scarred. Like that's his whole thing.
If you guys ever want a good laugh, watch the college humor. Batman talking to Two-Face is probably the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Catwoman's a girl in a leather suit. Like
that's good at stealing things. Like
yeah. Well, and I think that it's the Deadpool joke, right? Anytime you're using Superman, you better get ready for a big, expensive CGI fight because that's what it's going to be.
Well, and we talked about this. I mentioned it before, maybe like a couple episodes ago, right? Like the problem with the Falcon Winter Soldier movie and how they handled Red Hulk in that is that like they can't handle Red Hulk, right? Like that's it. Like and that's what I'm worried about with the Thunderbolts. Like they can't fight the Sentry. They cannot, or the Void probably, but they cannot fight him. There's no way for them to win other than an obvious MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm. And that's the deal. We joke about Superman because you get into comic book nerds fights. There's always going to be one. I'm not saying it's Eric in our group, but there's always going to be one that wants to bring up who wins in a fight, right? And that's what you have to deal with Superman is because no one beats Superman. Actually, you can get around it with some magic.
Yeah, there's lots of people that beat Superman, but it's a smaller pool than most.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things that we brought up. The way you write villains for Superman, the way they achieve victory is by surviving. You beat Superman by getting away. Yeah. And so that's why there's always that plot point of like you have to rescue the people because I'm going to get away.
I mean, Superman has some people that have beaten him up.
Well, and for a while he was weak to magic, and with the Injustice
God.
Yeah.
Other fucking badass.
Shazam has beat Superman before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you start looking at. I think that there are some really interesting villains that they could put Superman up against because the reason I bring all of this up is that DC, with this release and Gunn taking over creative control, they're wanting to create a DCU, right? This is supposed to be the flag of the DCU.
Technically, actually, it was the animated show that they just did is like the beginning of it.
Oh, with Creature Commandos?
Yeah, Creature Commandos.
It's important to note that this is attempt 2.
Yeah, attempt 2. But we already got a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. I think Gunn being in charge is going to be great. Again, we talked last episode about Jason Momoa coming in as Lobo, which is going to be amazing. Nathan Fillion coming in as Guy Gardner and giving us a fresh look at the Green Lantern Corps.
The crazy
all
haircut.
Good things. Yeah, with the crazy haircut.
I want to know who Alan Tudyk's playing. I'm so excited.
I'm still going to be hesitant because it's DC.
Yeah, Survive just threw up Dance Off versus Void.
DC is not notorious, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
they have such a mixed track record, so it's okay to be leery. But I mean, I've been approaching a lot of franchises now with kind of that tentative toe in the water thing, which honestly has really helped me not overhype things, which was part of my burnout.
I expect everything to suck nowadays, so I'm often pleasantly surprised. Never disappointed.
James is going in, everything's going to be trash, and then he looks at it, he's like, not bad.
I'll tell you that Superman's going to be make or break for Gunn.
I don't
think for the DCU as a whole, it is.
Yeah, for him,
if Superman sucks, they're screwed.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
I mean, not really. I mean, DC's going to survive. They'll just cut bait and go a different direction. So he'll step down as CEO. They'll find somebody else. They'll wait a little while and they'll reboot. They'll try again. They'll make
and they're still doing
Robert
really, really well.
Batman movie. They'll make a bunch more animated films. They'll make video games, comics, all of it.
I just want it to do well so that I can get fucking Justice League Dark on the big screen.
I want JLD. That is a fact. Give me some Constantine and some Zatanna and Deadman. And you know what? We're an hour and 20 minutes into this episode, and I didn't get to bring up the Green Swamp Thing or Poison Ivy even once.
Well, the rest of the month is DC.
We have a whole month, Ryan. Calm down.
We will devote. I think we should probably just devote a whole episode to Justice League Dark or something.
Yeah.
No, we need to talk about episode to Solomon Grundy, who is also one of my favorite villains in DC of all time.
Grundy was a Batman villain, right?
Yeah, he's a Gotham
villain for a lot. He's a Gotham villain.
He's a Gotham-based villain.
Yeah,
Gotham villain. That's a better way to look at it.
Traditionally, yes, Batman. But
I am going to take this moment, guys. We've kind of generally covered Superman vague ideas. Obviously, you know his origin story. You know how his powers work, and the fact that none of us know exactly how his powers work. If you listened to the episode this far, we're really interested in what you have to say. So please jump over to the screen, go down to that comment section, tell me what you agreed with, what you disagree with, and what you would like to see coming out of DC month for March in the future. The best way to support the channel, guys, is to buy some merch. We got some good stuff. It's all in our link tree. Second best way is, of course, to do all the algorithm stuff. Give us a like, give us a follow, tell your friends to check us out, all that good stuff.
And let everyone know why Batman is better than Superman. Fuck that guy.
Pound sand and kick rocks.
Batman's the best.
Pikachu. And with that,
he could take both of them.
With that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. We've been crossing the Nerdverse. Thanks for joining us as we begin our foray into DC. We'll catch you next time.
See you guys.
Goodbye.
It's nice to say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. It's nice to say goodbye. You're going to have